Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast, the American Conference Preview. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin, and as usual with our guy Duck. Gentlemen, this is going out of order here. This is the last conference preview that we will record in its entirety. It's been a lot of work. It took me less than 2 months to go through the entire number crunching and preview stuff. I try to do to a less successful extent what Duck does over months and months in about 8 weeks. So I'm excited for this one. This is a good one. The American Conference, the home of the greatest logo in college football, if not of all sports, the Tulane Green Wave. This is our last one. Going to get a little emotional here. Looking forward to it. Let me move ahead here. If you want a PDF of this and all the other decks that we use to do our conference previews, you can just leave your email address in the YouTube comments or hit me up at Twitter, sometimes known as X, at BuckMetrics. This is a glossary of the terms that we use in this and other previews and throughout the season. Probably be a good idea if you don't have this to take a screenshot and keep it for your reference for this and other podcasts. Guys, I asked AI to do some images of us celebrating really American stuff in celebration of the American Conference, and boy, AI did not disappoint. This is awesome. I'm not really sure. Let me grab my laser pointer here. Not really sure who this is. Apparently it's me. Robert, this is like image number 10 that I suggested. I wanted to be more and more festive, and this still looks like, I don't know, something between an office party and a retirement home. Not good. Then I asked
and not enough American flag.
Yes. I asked it to include Duck, and I don't know. It included this guy who was really not him. But very touching. We've seen this in different kind of circumstances. Apparently, Robert gave his left arm in service of America as a Canadian, which is... We cannot express our gratitude enough, Robert, and yet you're able to hold a drink in your right hand. You know what, kids? If you are very slow in generating horrible images over a long period of time, I can tell you AI is definitely coming for your job. Boy, this is just horrible. But it is the American Conference, the overview of the American Conference. A lot of new coaches. It's weird. The new coaches, or the coaches' firings and movement last year seemed to be concentrated in the G5 and definitely not in the Power Four conferences. What is that? 5 new coaches, and then East Carolina moved their interim to a permanent, although permanent as a head coach in college football is a relative term to say the least. What really stuck out to me is you've almost got a caste system last year in terms of the effectiveness of passing games. It's just basically if you had a good passing game, you were in the top 5 in my ratings, and if you didn't, too bad. Although you probably were just not good at anything here, seeing how these teams are also bad at defense over here. As is not really a surprise, offensive line experience is really at a premium. You've only got one team that's got a green returning starts metric here and 2 in the learning curve. I think that's just the reality of what it is to be a G5 conference in the modern day. Robert, first thoughts on what stands out to you in the overview here?
Yeah, that's really the way the conference was, right? It was basically there was 5 good teams and then everybody else. And there was a massive gulf between there. And to be fair, there was times where basically any of those 5 really, and obviously Memphis in there too, although Memphis didn't have that good of QB play according to this. But basically there was Army and there was Navy and there was Memphis and then there was Tulane. And that was it. This was a very top heavy conference. UTSA took a massive step back. Tulane did take a bit of a step back, but not as much. And then you had randomly had Army and Navy, which at some point they were going to the playoff at some point, and we just ended up with the final outcome we had, where Memphis won, but it didn't really matter because Boise State was going to gain the playoff berth. So it's interesting how the teams that were the worst teams definitely fired their coach, and that was important. But it's just crazy how big the difference was between the good teams and the bad teams. And the bad teams definitely needed to fix some things, and they definitely did. Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Cannot disagree. Duck, what sticks out to you? Any first impressions just in the overview here?
Yeah, it was a real top-heavy league last season, and I think that's going to be... We're going to see when we dive into the power players in the American Conference that all of these teams now have things that they're going to have to work out. So I think top to bottom, the league is definitely not as strong as it was last season when we look at 2025 and projecting forward. The bottom of this league is really bad. We'll get into those 6 teams towards the end of the preview, but we're really seeing a bunch of bad teams that are going to be bunched at the bottom that are all going to be in that 3 or 4 win range. And scary just in the G5 landscape in general, right? Concomitant to what we've seen with all these other G5 leagues. A lot of these teams are their high talent players are getting poached and they're having to backfill with FCS talent. Almost every team that I did research on all of them, and every one of these teams has a transient nature about the offensive line, and they're reshuffling and retooling and trying to put things together. And you have great skill guys that are gone, quarterbacks that come and go. It's just G5 football in a microcosm today, and it's really exasperated, I think, in this league.
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't too excited about this conference going into last season. Then you had Army and Tulane coming out of relatively nowhere, which service academies can do. Then Darian Mensa comes on the scene and just is awesome, and that gave it a good narrative. And then you had North Texas, who just decided we're going to be really fun at one side of the ball and really horrible. So you had a lot more excitement. I'm a lot more excited this year than I was about this time last year about this conference. Get to our first team. This is not one of the teams that excites me. Memphis. I didn't even realize they went 11-2 last year. The thing is, I just had them as just the fourth most good luck in all of FBS last year. They never really struck me as impressive from a metric standpoint, so I just missed the won and loss record because they were playing. I actually was pretty bearish on this team going into last year. I was probably one of the biggest Seth Hennigan truthers, if there is such a thing, last year. And he turned out to really just not be that good last year, notwithstanding their one-loss record. Along the lines of this good luck, my gosh, look at these post-game win probabilities. If you're playing Middle Tennessee to a draw, you're not a good team. Now, we all have one bad game. Okay. If you're doing that's not impressive. If basically you're playing Charlotte to a little bit better than a draw, you should have lost to Rice. That's fine. No shame in a 36% win probability against Tulane, but these are all games that they won. This is just a lucky team by my metrics. The new quarterback is Brendan Lewis, who had a 94 apex at Nevada. We really need to, I guess, just take note of that's one good season after 4 really bad seasons with a composite apex of 59. And I want to point out that the coach that he had for this 94 apex left Nevada, and he's, I think, the co-OC at Kansas now. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have that level of coaching here if we use Seth Hannigan's career as a proxy. This is his apex by year. Never a good sign when your best season is your first and your worst season is your last. That's not good coaching. If I combine this fact pattern with this fact pattern, I am expecting huge, with a capital H, a regression from Brendan Lewis here. The offensive line has, even relative to a conference that is banged up or whatever, in terms of just retention on the offensive line, they stick out as really the most beat up. Now, Silverfield, the coach, is a former offensive line coach, so that probably mitigates that to the degree. The defense was not good last year. They lose a ton in terms of their returning starts and their improvement metric. I'm missing the whole thing here. Phil's aligned with the market, and BuckMetrics is just not getting it here. The season win total is at 8.5. The under's taking some money, but that number just seems way too high. I think this team is overvalued. I don't know if it's playable, but I don't see this team contending by the time we're in the middle of November. What about you, Duck?
I certainly could see that narrative playing out. The problem is that Memphis is backed by FedEx, and they spent more money than anybody in the G5 getting players in. And they did have the number 1 portal class as far as talent that they portaled into backfill. I think the hard thing is you lose all of this exceptional talent that we've come to know and love. Seth Hennigan is gone. Mario Anderson, the running back, is gone. Rock Taylor is gone at receiver. Just all these Memphis cornerstones that you could count on for production. And so this team's going to look a little bit different next season. But they did portal in guys like Frank Peasant from Middle Tennessee, who has a little bit of explosiveness to him. They've got 4 receivers via the portal. 3 of them were Power 4 players at receiver, guys that come in from Louisville and Purdue. The offensive line is what concerns me. You have 9 guys that portal in, and you lose your center, you lose your right tackle. You're relying now on players that are coming in from Kennesaw State and the Division II ranks and Florida International. It's just a hodgepodge that I'm not necessarily willing to say is going to be firing on all cylinders immediately. Good thing is they do have a couple of games that they should be heavy favorites in and should be able to figure it out before they really find themselves in some tough situations. I would say, from a general betting nugget, there is no better spot in the entire country to bet on a team than there is when Arkansas comes to town. Arkansas has a conference road game the week before, and then the week after they host Notre Dame, and it is just an absolute nasty spot for Arkansas. And so, from a scheduling perspective, Memphis did win that one. And the other thing to think about is there's the conference winnables. The conference road games are winnable at FAU, UAB, and Rice, which will be in that kind of bottom half. And then at East Carolina, I'm still kind of up in the air on whether I think East Carolina actually turned the corner last season or if they just played crappy teams after their coach was fired and they built a little momentum that way. But all the toughies you get at home. So you get South Florida, you get Tulane, you get Navy at home. And so when your winnables are on the road and you can steal a couple of those at home, you could be 6-2 in league play. And so I still think this bunch is probably fairly valued. I thought the win total was pretty sharp. I was hoping we'd see a 7.5, so I could maybe go over. But 8.5, I don't have a play on it, but I think it's a sharp number.
You don't have the concerns that I do about, we'll just call 1 year wonder, Brendan Lewis.
They're going to run a little bit more two tight end sets this year, and they're going to run the ball a little bit more to attempt to be more balanced. They did a little bit more of that. We're used to Memphis with the high flying passing offenses and the vertical shots, but they tried to mix in the run a little bit more last year, and I think we'll see a little bit more run this year, and we'll probably see some quarterback run. So I think he'll do okay in this system. Yeah, it's hard to judge that his play when he was on such a terrible team at Nevada for several years. So I don't think it'll end up being as bad as what it is possibly painted.
Okay, I like it. Opposite sides. Robert, you more bearish or bullish on Memphis here?
I think this team is probably due for some sort of regression. They've been strong the last couple of years with Seth Hennigan, and he hasn't looked like the greatest in the preseason so far. He got drafted by or signed by someone, I can't remember who it was, but I remember his stat line didn't pop too much in the NFL preseason. I think there is probably some regression that should be penciled in. I think this team definitely overperformed at 11-2, and that's what the books are telling us by the over 8.5 being juiced. If the books really believed the 11-2, then their win total would be 10.5. Because I'm looking at the schedule, if Memphis is supposed to be an 11-2 team, where are the losses? It's not like they're playing like Georgia on here or something, right? Like there isn't. What is it? Tulane? Is that? No, they play Tulane. They play Tulane and what else? Army, Navy.
These last 3 games here are tricky, and then Arkansas. Although Duck makes a good point, that's just about as ideal as it gets a scheduling standpoint for Memphis.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I probably don't want to touch it. I think I'd probably play the under here. I think the quarterback play there is a bit concerning. So I wouldn't. I like Hennigan's apex has been declining over the last few years. And again, you mentioned that they're going to run the ball more, but their offensive line got hurt, right? So it's pretty beat up here compared to the portal and transfers, right? So if you're now, we're going to run the ball, you don't have the best O-line here. So I would say I'd pencil in a regression. And just even looking at last year, too, like last year in week 3, they upset Florida State at Florida State. They beat them 20-12. Now, at the time, we're like, that's it. Memphis is here. They're back. They're doing good. But now, every week after that win, that win looked worse and worse. It's like you beat them by 8. You didn't beat them by 20. Like that. It's crazy. That's how that loss looked. That win looked later in the season. It's like you only beat them by 8. You should have beaten them by more than 8. But that's the thing, right? It's. I don't know. I think they're a little overvalued, but I probably wouldn't play this total.
I think the other thing to think about, too, is defensively, they were actually quite solid last season, and it's a full rebuild at all 3 levels. They lost so much defensive production, and so you now have transfers in, 5 transfers on the D-line, 7 transfers at linebacker, 7 transfers in the secondary. And when you secure 46 sacks and 83 tackles for loss, and you really bow up in the red zone and all that production is lost. Yeah, I can see a little bit of defensive regression for sure. As far as the win total, though, I've got them double-digit favorites in 7 games, so you can't say that 8.5 is too. I mean, it's not too low.
It's the other ones. It's the other ones though that it's like you're say call it just about even money, just to basically win one where it seems improbable. And I guess it's a different thing. I see this team as a good cut below where you do are. Hello, in English we might say where you do. So it's an easier call for me. But again, I don't think it's playably. But I'm just going to kind of hate watch this team, if you will. And if they beat Arkansas, I'm going to forget I ever said this and just ask Robert to delete this
from the archives
episode here. Yes. Yeah. All right. Next, another team I'm not really hip on. TSA Roadrunners. Owen McCown for this conference 91 Apex in his first year starting. I'm fine with that. They have the top Ryan in the entire conference, 9th in FBS. Not surprising with how smartly Traylor's kind of built this program and how well respected he is as a coach. This was an average defense that I got a lot of red here, so there's a rebuild here. And it was averaged by American standards, so we'll just keep that in mind. You hit on something earlier, Duck, and I made a note of it in terms of, I don't remember what you said to jar this, but no, I think it was Robert, and you said one of you guys said UTSA took a step back. And I made this point last year, and I think that it still holds true, is that Traylor had a couple of really good OC hires in Barry Lunney, now at Illinois, and then Will Stein, who's apparently like the biggest genius on the offensive side of the ball at Oregon. And I think they don't all work out. And I think his OC hire now is a guy that just isn't working out. I think it might be as simple as that. Traylor's, it's not like in 1 year became a bad coach. And I think he's doing okay from a talent standpoint. But 7.5, the over is just getting a ton of money, which seems crazy to me. I probably see this a little more bearishly than Duck does. But I think you've got tough games against A&M and Texas State. I think I'm probably a lot more bullish on North Texas than most people. I don't think that's an easy game. Tulane's not an easy game. South Florida's going to be tricky. You've got a lot of losable games in here. This 7.5, it seems a little high, not crazily, but minus 150 to the over just shocks the conscience, to use Supreme Court language. So again, I don't know if I'm going to bet it. The old Robert gave me $100. I would go under 7.5 at plus money. What do you think, Duck?
Again, it's not a win total that I bet, but you do get a lot of winnables on the road. You get Temple on the road in league play, North Texas, South Florida, which is probably more of a coin flip, to be honest with you, and then at Charlotte. So your tough conference games, Tulane, Army, East Carolina, are all at home. And I think that they're probably 3-1 in the non-conference, if I'm being honest with you. I think Colorado State. Yeah, I do. Texas State is so transient, and we saw it just didn't work out at times last season, and they lose a lot of the pop that they had on offense. Colorado State, the book is still out on Jay Norvell, and if that Colorado State team is more ascending or was last year kind of a fluke, hard for me to say necessarily, but I will say that I think UTSA will have the best offense in the conference with Owen McCown coming back for another season. John Emery comes in from LSU, who was a really solid running back recruit for them. So he'll spell Robert Henry, who's a decent 700-yard running back last season. I think they've got probably 4 or 5 decent options at receiver, and they're going to throw the ball around a lot and run a little bit more tempo this year. So we should see some high-scoring games, I'm guessing, with UTSA. The offensive line is not as in flux as some of these other groups, and they did portal in 2 or 3 guys that were Power 4 guys, a couple guys from the Big Ten, and a guy from Houston comes in. So I think at the tackle position they'll be shored up. They have probably more consistency along the offensive line than most of these other groups that we'll talk about early. And the key is just defensively, because they have made their mark for years on this. Jeff Traylor's thing is the triangle of toughness and this real hard-nosed defense. And we saw it last season, 114 tackles for loss and 46 sacks are just exceptional numbers. You look at a team that's really good in money situations and situational football, third down defense and bowing up in the red zone and holding teams to field goals. Those are just things that are so contagious, and year over year, it's stuff that UTSA does well. So it's hard for me to really want to bet against this group. especially when you've got FCS Incarnate Word, Temple, Rice, Charlotte. Again, Texas State, I think they'll win. You've got probably 6 games that you're going to be decided favorites in. And I don't know, it wouldn't shock me at all if they beat Army or ECU in those final 2 games of the season at home. I think 8-4 is about right. I think UTSA could win
Really?
the conference, if I'm being honest with you.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh! Wow.
I
Okay.
did. I actually bet. I bet UTSA at 7 plus 750 to win the conference.
Wow. I like it. Two teams and two different sides of both coins. I like it. Robert, tell Duck he's wrong. I'm joking. This team did go 6-6 in the regular season last year, so they do have some ground to make up, though. Robert.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously the longtime quarterback. I just remember what his name here. Oh, the longtime Frank Harris, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Frank
yeah.
Harris left, and that this was the first year kind of post Frank Harris. They regressed a little bit, as expected. They could still be really good. Their defense was still pretty good last year, but at the same point in time, I don't know. They do keep some of the offensive production. The offensive line is intact, but the defense did take some hits. I think you'd probably want to see some of those defensive players sticking around, building on what they saw last year. I don't know. I think this is probably another stay away. I wouldn't be bullish on them to win the conference, but could you see something along the lines of I could see them being competitive in the top near the top of the conference potentially, but I'm definitely not in win the conference territory. That's a bit too bullish for me, I'd say, but they could be a good team is how I view it. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess the other thing to think about too is when you look at a conference like the American, where all of these talented teams are seeing their players plucked, and you're
Mm-hmm.
generally backfilling from the
Yep.
FCS ranks.
Yep.
You get guys from Baylor, TCU, Central Florida, Oklahoma State that come in to backfill on defense. There are pieces here to build around defensively. I know they lose a lot. They lost a lot to graduation and had a couple guys drafted, but you're backfilling with more now than what a lot of your opposition and your competition is doing. So I
Yep.
think year to year we're going to see a lot of higher variance than ever, especially at the G5s.
Fair.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a fair point. And to that point, I was going to say, when you have this kind of giant Ryan that you're retaining from last year too, you in a G5 conference, you have the same quarterback who has proven to be at least good in his first year. You're way ahead of everybody in that regard. Now, the defense is a different matter, but there is definitely a case to be made here. I'm concerned about the other half of the ball. I'll just say that. The next P5 coach coming from the group of five, P4, pardon me, coming from the group of five at Tulane, John Summerall. My note here is basically I said they had the top normie passing game. Army and Navy, they bend light when it comes to passing stats because they throw it like 12 times a game and they just fool you into just leaving guys wide open. Last year's quarterback, Darian Mensa, is now at Duke. Duck, you know this better than me and Robert since you're closer. Is it Retzlaff or is it Sullivan at this point?
Haven't heard anything out of camp. I think
Okay.
that it's just still a battle with them and Caden Siemens, who came in from Ball State.
Okay, yeah, but the last two words are operative. Ball State. I'll just keep it at that, okay?
Hey, he
I
was
mean,
brought
you're-
in to be the starter, so I think it's 3 that are competing.
I don't want to talk crap about my guy John Summerall here, but I don't like the quarterback situation. I'll say it this way. Now Sullivan had some good numbers at Iowa. I don't like maybe your best quarterback not even being in for spring. I really don't like it. Samoza had a bad Apex. Okay, now Apex is not the be all end all, but I trust it as much as anything else. I'm very comfortable in saying that the defenses in the American are far superior. Even at the low end of this conference are going to be better, as we had a few yucks in the MAC preview, as we always do, about some of those defenses. All right, they add Omari Hayes with a nice Ryan from FAU. They were the biggest Ryan portal winner in the conference at adding 624. This is a big swing right here. They lost 81 in transfers as well. The best defense in the American, not a surprise considering Summerall's the coach. So I'm at the point with 3 years with the track record here with Summerall. It's Kirby Smart, Brent Venables. I'm not concerned about this guy's defense. He'll always have a good defense no matter where he is, except for maybe the first year at his next job when he takes over at Auburn or wherever it's going to be. I don't see the case for the under getting crushed here under 8.5. This is a good team. Again, it's got, maybe this is another discussion. We hit on it in one of our other previews. I think this is the best coach, if not one of, if not the, then definitely one of the best coaches in the group of five. He alone makes the floor high here. I don't see how the under is, juicing 160. It just doesn't make sense here. I don't know if this is playable. This is why I like this. Talking about it with you two, I'll have a better sense for if I want to play it. But this seems like a very undervalued team. Robert, you share my sentiments here on that?
Yeah, I think this team should be pretty good. I like John Summerall. They actually had a pretty good year last year. Every year, this team seems to play some sort of Power 4 team and almost knock it off. And last year, it was Kansas State and Oklahoma, actually. The year before, it was Ole Miss. So they've weirdly come very close in a lot of these games to knocking out relatively powerful opponents. They're getting closer. They're going to put it together. I think, yes, Darian Mintz is gone. That's a bit sad. But Jake Retzlaff, nothing to sneeze at from BYU. I don't know if he's going to be ready week one. Week one is against Northwestern, so not really the craziest opponent to have to face week one. He can, if he's sitting or not, maybe he gets some reps in the fourth quarter or something. You can ease them into it. You've got South Alabama there as well. You also have Duke. You have at Mississippi. You have Ole Miss for some reason. But Duke is the Darian Mensah Bowl. That one's going to be fun. September 13th. And I don't know. I think undervalued is fair. You can see a couple of losses there. Maybe, I guess, probably they lose to Ole Miss. Probably. Maybe they lose to Duke. And maybe they lose a couple. Maybe they lose another one in conference. But there's a chance they could win those. So I'd probably bet on them and bet them to go over here. I don't know if I would. I probably would leave it, but I like an overplay here.
Yeah, a couple questions for you, Duck, to get you started on Tulane. First, and they're totally different. So if you forget one of them, I would do at my age. Coming into last season, was Darian Mensah even on the grid as terms of a player? And then a totally different question. Looking at this, I would have him favored in all 8 conference games. Do you have him the same? So 2 unfair Part A, Part B questions. If you can remember both of them and answer them, that would be great.
I think Darian Mensah was thrown into the fire because they had all of the opt-outs that they experienced in the bowl game when they went out and lost by 3 touchdowns against Virginia Tech in the 2023 Military Bowl. That was after embarrassing loss against SMU in the AAC championship game, and then a ton of opt-outs. And I forget who it was that opted out. Was it Pratt still that had opted out? Probably, in 2023, and a ton of everyone on the O-line opted out, and they just didn't stand a chance, so he was thrown into the fire there. So I think that he was pegged as the starter, but I don't know necessarily that everyone knew he was going to be a star. I don't know what to tell you guys because I've never been on the opposite side of the coin with you as much as I have. I bet.
Yes. You're not here to just say, hey, good point, Buck. Let's go on. Let's move on.
I bet Tulane under 8.5 early in the summer. Wow. I bet it at plus 110. Yeah, I can't tell you I bet it at this current price. I bet it a lot better a price, but just who they lost along the defensive line, which completely anchored this Tulane defensive bunch all season. Fobbs White is gone. Aiden Huntington is gone. Parker Peterson is gone. You lose Patrick Jenkins. You lose 2 or 3 linebackers. Machado at linebacker was a huge loss. 2 or 3 guys in the secondary are all gone. And so now you're having a complete and full rebuild. And we just talked about UTSA bringing guys in from the Big 12. Guys here that have come in are guys that played at Wofford or Southern Miss, UTEP. I just don't know if we're going to see the sort of continuity and the real wow factor in the defensive front 7 that was a real catalyst for Tulane last year. When you look at Tulane being able to really hold teams down in the ground game, they couldn't run on Tulane, and the pass rush was just so ferocious that the opposition just didn't stand a chance week in and week out. They're not going to have that this year. I have them starting 1-3. I've got them as underdogs against Duke and also significant underdogs against Ole Miss. They'll be catching 3 touchdowns at Ole Miss. And honestly, I faded Tulane in week 1. I have Northwestern plus 7.5 in hand. And it won't surprise me at all if Northwestern goes down there and wins the game. So I think Tulane is, plus let's talk about what they lost offensively with Mekhi Hughes going. Quarterback Mensa goes to Duke. Mario Williams, one of their best receiver, is gone. 4 guys on the O-line are gone, so you're revamping the O-line. I think this is going to be a very good football team in the American this season, and I think that they could be right there and have their hand in what happens in conference play at the end of the season. But to assume 9-3 or better, I think they just lost way too much talent and they were not able to backfill the way some of these other teams have. So I did go under 8.5. I think this is probably a team that's 8-4. I think they'll be 6-2 in league play. When I looked at the schedule in league play, I think that the road trips to UTSA and Memphis back to back are really tough. I think to expect that bunch to go to the Alamo Dome and then go to Memphis on back to back weeks is going to be tough. Hosting Army and ECU are going to be no cakewalks. So, yeah, I don't think it takes much to see this team regress slightly back to the norm. You got to remember, for 20 years, Tulane football was just absolutely awful and just had no ability whatsoever to put competitive teams on the field. And so, yeah, they've done it for a couple of years, but with all of the graduation and the guys that have transferred out, I don't think they're elite. I can't assume 9-3 this year with this group, with Duke, Northwestern, and Ole Miss on the schedule. I think they lose every one of those games, and so I think it's 8-4 for Tulane, probably 6-2 in league play at best, and just barely under the win total with an important hook. 8.5 is an important hook.
So you make a good point, and it makes sense since you're more bullish on UTSA and Memphis than I am. That basically you just see those as swings versus what I do. Again, it's just the different sides of the coins. Let me just give you, and some of these are more long term, but I'm curious what your take is. Bigger picture, you make a good point. Tulane, basically from the day that J.P. Losman left until basically they hired Willie Fritz, they were a non-entity in the sport. Now, they did hire Willie Fritz and made a great hire, and they made another brilliant hire in John Summerall. And they're a private school, so I think they might be getting it, and they might be actually almost be stumbling into the private school, throw out Stanford and Northwestern division, and just saying, oh, we can actually do well at this because we have more money. We just have to try. And again, you make a really good case about the defense. I guess if I just want to plant one seed to make you nervous, to the extent that you would be nervous, although you're objective like me, so you probably don't get nervous, it would be, I have faith in Summerall, basically, if the linebacking crew was the 3 guys on the right of the screen here, us 3. He could coach us up. The guy's he's that good defensively. That'll be interesting to see. You make a good point about the roster, and I'm relying on the coach. And I think in the G5 conference, the truth is somewhere in between, and we'll see exactly on which side of the spectrum it lies. So I do appreciate you defending Caden Somoza, though. That's very gallant of you. All right. We might agree on this one, it sounds, based on some comments you made earlier, Duck. South Florida, Byron Brown was out for the year after an injury against Tulane. If we look at last year, his numbers stunk, this 81 apex, but if I just take out the Alabama game, because guess what? They don't play Alabama, and guess what? Florida and Miami are not conference games, and also guess what? I'm not really counting on those as wins anyways. So if we just say everybody else, his apex is 118. They lost 0 Ryan to the portal last year, which I think speaks very well to what Golish has gotten on here. This should be one of the top offenses in the American this year. The defense has the top learning curve metric in the American. The defense is still not great, but if you look to here at what Todd Orlando has done, now he's not everybody's cup of tea, but before he came on, this defense was basically a -15 defensive rating. And over 3 years, he's improved it by almost 10 points. It's been heading in the right direction, and this should be another step forward this year. The non-conference, this is just straight out of the MAC. Boise State, Florida, Miami, and South Carolina State, that is a worker bee thing there. They're paying all the bills at South Florida, the football team is. Okay, this is tough. They're going to lose 3. They might actually have a chance against Boise. I don't know. Duck, you probably have a good take on that. We'll get that in a second. But the 6.5 here seems awfully low to me. I think this team is significantly undervalued. I think the market is just overlooking this little gem right here. If you just take out the Alabama game, you've got a quarterback that can run and throw that is magic. You've got a passing game that is pretty much intact year to year, especially in the context of a G5 program, and a defense that has improved every single year and has a metric that points to that. I think this team is significantly, possibly bettably undervalued. Duck, are you going to agree with me for once on this podcast?
I sure hope so. I would consider them slightly undervalued. I think the win total is just assuming 0-3 to start. And I can understand why they would do that. They started out at 9.5 point underdogs against Boise. That's come down. I'm part of that. I did bet on South Florida in week 1 plus 8.5. It's now crossed through 7 and down to 6.5. But I just think that this win total is just assuming 0-3 to start. So now you're battling uphill with the rest of your schedule to try to salvage the season. But I still think that this can be a really feisty out in AC play. And I think that they have in the middle of their schedule probably 5 winnable games, let's call it. But I think Memphis, UTSA, and Navy are just a brutal stretch late. So if they're not too beat up in the first 3, because when you got to go to Florida and go to Miami, depending on how those games play out, as long as they can stay healthy, which they have had problems with health in the past, specifically at quarterback, because the drop-off is so massive after Byron Brown. So if he's healthy, I think this team could make a run at it. I think they'll have plenty of opportunities to win shootouts because I don't think the defense is necessarily that improved. Although, again, they went out and got a ton of guys in the portal, so we'll see how they all gel together. They're hodgepodging together all 3 levels of the defense, so I think you've got some pieces to work with, but it's all going to come down, in my opinion, to how they can protect the quarterback and how the quarterback health is. Because if Byron Brown gets hurt, I'd say look out for this to go sideways quickly. But initially, certainly my lean is that they'd go over 6.5. I definitely think this is a bowl team this year and a team that I think has an outside shot to really make some noise.
Yeah. Robert, you as bullish as us, as Duck and I are?
Yeah, this team has randomly done some good things in a couple of years. To be fair, they've had 7-6 the last 2 years, which is pretty remarkable given where Alex Golish started at, right? They were at like 1-8, 2-10, 1-11, and then he comes in and all of a sudden 2 straight bowls, right? That's pretty crazy. That's a kind of insane run there. Byron Brown was actually pretty good in some games. He was really not good there against Alabama. Got injured. But like even then, after that game, they got injured. Got injured against Tulane. That was the 4th game. They had 2 wins there. They were still able to win on their 5 games, even with their starting quarterback injured. That's pretty impressive. I think he's actually a good coach. I think maybe just betting a bowl again is not a bad idea. I think this is maybe the first test for Boise State here, right? They have them week 1, and Boise State is visiting them, so you're going from the West Coast all the way down to Florida. It's going to be very hot there, much hotter than it would be, say, in Boise. If South Florida is legit, and to be fair, that line is actually crashing, actually. That line is right now down to a 6 on the Thursday night game. Or Thursday, is it Thursday afternoon? That's weird. Anyway, yeah, it's a Thursday at 5:30 in the afternoon game. That's a weird time to have a game. But anyways, that's a test, right? Like that line was, I think, 8. Now it's down to 6. So the books clearly are seeing something there. I don't know if they can actually beat them, but it's going to be interesting to see if they can or how close they can get here.
Let me ask both of you, because I think this is the most interesting game on this schedule. If you were going to bet Boise, how many points would you want? Boise at South Florida in this spot. Or how many points would you be willing to give? Pardon me. If you're on Boise.
I think the 6 is probably about... I think the 6 is about right. But I wouldn't want to give more than like a touchdown to 10 points. Like I think that's the line.
I wouldn't want to give anything with Boise. I think that they lost so much production, and their defensive front 7 was exposed time in and time out last season in Mountain West play against crappy quarterbacks who couldn't throw the ball. And we saw it against Georgia Southern, where they were just exhausted by the Southeast heat. They couldn't get off the field on defense. They couldn't stop Georgia Southern. And I think we'll see a repeat of that. I'm not going to necessarily guarantee that South Florida wins this game, but I wouldn't lay anything over a field goal anyway with Boise. I just couldn't do it. Not in
That's
this
where I
spot.
was landing. Was like I wouldn't. I just boy without Genty, I'm really there. I think there's significant downside, especially like in that first game post Genty for Boise. It could go bad in a really bad way here for Boise. And even if it was just going to be -2, that wouldn't entice me. But if I could get 7.5, I definitely would take South Florida. I think that's what is that, a win probably of probably like 40% for South Florida, which I don't know, interesting. That's one of the I don't know, because we're nerds. That's one of the most interesting games to me in week one here. Good points though. Good discussion. All right, I'm going to be quick on this one. The service academies, especially Army and Navy, are so hard to project. The Air Force, it seems, has a bit more continuity for whatever reason. Okay, Blake Horvath returns. It's their obviously their returning quarterback. He was their top rusher too. That just scares me. You get one guy and he gets hurt, and my gosh, this thing's done. It should be a above average defense in the American again. The season win total is 8.5. Just without looking at the schedule, that seems high, but they always mix a team like VMI. Thank you very much. I just can't make a call here. It's so hard with the service academies, especially when you've got basically one guy he's like the whole thing on offense. Well, if he stays healthy, they should be good, especially a good offense and a good defense, but it's just hard to project these service academies. So I have no call here. You have more than this than I do, Duck?
I think the problem with Navy is that their offense and the nuances of the Drew Chronic wing T offense that Navy ran last year certainly got off the ground running, but they got hot by beating teams like Bucknell, Temple, UAB, Air Force, Charlotte. They were just beating up on all these bottom teams in American play. And once you started to get some film on the offense, and once teams had a little bit to study on what they wanted to do, it just didn't work as well. We certainly saw it against Notre Dame, which they were outclassed talent-wise, but then we saw it against Rice, and we saw it against Tulane, where this team just got destroyed. And we saw it at times when the USF game was close for a while, and they just really struggled with the explosivity and the pop, and they just didn't have a tremendous amount of, from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, we're going to be explosive running the football. What's coming, you're not going to be able to stop it. It just wasn't there in the second half of the season. And so I think that Navy could struggle to just do that again this season. I think it's a good football team. I think the schedule really is one that is conducive to having them have some significant success, especially early on in the slate when you look at who the team. There's no line on this game yet, but I'm absolutely going to back them no matter what the line is against VMI. We could get into that later, but they will destroy VMI, and it will not be close. But then UAB, Tulsa, Rice, Air Force, probably an ascending Air Force. I'd say Air Force will be a lot trickier than what people think. Temple, FAU, North Texas, they could be undefeated going to Notre Dame Stadium. And the back third of the schedule is just brutal, though. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it's 2-2 down the stretch. I would have no choice but to play over 8.5, just because this team could be very easily, we're looking at a 7-1 start at worst. And I think that with the key pieces that they have returning offensively, there are things that you can count on. Their fullback, Alex Texa, is just a spectacular player who he's going to get 5 yards a carry every game. Horvath is going to run that system. He knows what to do. He's got another year in the system, so you're just going to see that more explosivity. The slot backs are explosive and reliable, and they don't make mistakes. The offensive line is, you don't portal people in at Navy, so the portal's kind of a one-way street, so it's next man up. But that has worked for them since the beginning of time, really. I think it'll be just fine again this season. Defensively, there are some losses, and I think there's a cause for concern. Last year with Navy, you saw them just completely shut some teams down, and they don't run a lot of weird stuff defensively. It's really a 4-3 base or a 4-2-5, and they send a little bit of blitz, but they're not trying to get the knockout punch. They're just trying to keep you behind the chains and force fourth down and have you make a decision on if you're going to go for it or punt. And it's worked well for them for many years. So should be solid, although I don't know that they'll be as good as they were last season just because, you graduate some seniors and you lose some guys that transfer out and there's nobody else transferring in. So I'd have no way to play this other than over 9.5, but I'm not sold that it'll be a dream season for Navy as far as something crazy like going undefeated or making the playoff. I'm not willing to call that, but I'd go over 8.5.
Wow, I think those last five are tough, but again, tough call. Robert, any strong opinions on Navy here?
No, I will say that basically Navy has been trending up the last couple of years, and that's a positive thing. But at the same point in time, there's just insane variance for some of these service academy schools. Some years they're really good, some years they're really bad. I think Navy might be might be pretty legit this year, but outside of that, I think if you and not to spoil what we're talking about next, I probably pick Navy over Army this year. But again, it's extremely highly variable. I think Blake Horvath is pretty good. They seem to be good. That means generally they will be good, but they could not. That's even happened to Air Force a couple times, right? Looked like they were going to be good, and then all of a sudden they don't have it. So I'll stay away from this, but I think Navy might have an outside shot here.
Yeah, I do want to say, not that I root against Navy, but I'm just not happy that they've had success after firing Ken Niumatalolo. I like him. So they kind of did him wrong. I think their AD's a schmuck. So I think it's his name, Kent Gladschmuck or something like that. I'm kidding. But he is dumb enough to be on the playoff committee, so he deserves to, I don't know, anything bad happens to him. Were you going to say something, Duck?
No, it was just funny what you said.
Okay. Okay, the other service academy, Army, are defending champs in their first season in the American, if I remember correctly. Second best in offensive and defensive rating by my metrics last year. Here's where it gets really tricky. They lose Bryson Daly, who was just an awesome quarterback, running and throwing. They lose Kanye Udo to, I believe, Arizona State. They should be one of the best defenses in conference again. The season win total 7.5. The under's taking some money. Like I said, it's hard to project Navy. It's really hard to project Army when you're losing basically Udo and Bryson Daly, which is a huge drawback. Why not fade him? Because of, I forget which one, the Munkin. Is it Jeff that's here? I'll remember this one of these times. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Munkin.
It's not smart. I don't know. Going against Jeff Munkin's not really the best strategy if you're just playing coaches to start with. So I'm just sitting this one out. I think there's going to be some learning curve at the beginning, but with Army and Munkin, you never know. So I'm just going to sit and watch. You got stronger feelings about this one, Duck?
I do. I went under 7.5. It was a
Really?
play that I did. Oh, absolutely. So there is no way that we can expect the sort of magical run that we saw from Army last season. It just took so many stars aligning. You had Captain America, Bryson Daly, that was just in full command of the offense. He knew exactly how to run the offense to a T. You had the bruising fullback, the B-back they call it, in Kanye Udo, who's now off to Arizona State. They lose one of their really stud defenders, Elo Mendoza, goes to Georgia, and there's no portal to pluck from to get these guys backfilled. And so you really do take a significant talent drop down. My goodness, Bryson Daly ran for 1,700 yards and 32 touchdowns, and he threw for 9 scores, which is a good mark at Army. And you've got the O-line that won the Joe Moore Award. They lose both of their starting tackles and their center, and those are just really pivotal pieces in the triple option offense. And the guy drawing up all the schemes on the offensive line, Matt Drinkall, is now coaching at Central Michigan. And so you're breaking in a new offensive line coach. You've got both your tackles you have to replace, a new quarterback in D. Wayne Coleman, who's unproven. He could be good. He's probably a little better passer maybe than what they're used to having there, but Jake Rendina is going to step in at the B-back position and try and shore up the production lost by Kanye Udo. But I just absolutely do not see anything close to what we saw last season from Army. The schedule also really stiffens. Rather than playing teams like Lehigh, FAU, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, UAB, just absolute garbage competition. You got to go to Kansas State early. You have road trips to ECU and UAB. And if you look at prior seasons, anytime that anytime that Army has had to go to the Southeast, they have really put up some stinkers in prior seasons against former Sun Belt teams. It's just been bad performances from Army on the road down there. So I would not be shocked at all if they lose one or both of at ECU or at UAB. You got road trips at Tulane and at Air Force. I think Air Force is absolutely a play-on team this year and a really emerging bunch. Just put on the film for how they played their last 4 games last year. It was a completely different team.
Yeah, it was.
So then you've got at UTSA to close out the closing stretch of your season, and then the Army-Navy game. There's 8 games on this schedule this team could lose. And when you're in the heat of the battle in the middle of the third quarter and you're down by 2 touchdowns, and you're all looking around and Bryson Daly's not there and Udo's not there and the guy drawing it up for the offensive line, the voters voted them the best offensive line in the country. I just don't see this offense having nearly as much punch this season. So yeah, I did go under 7.5. I think that Army is still going to be a good football team. I think they'll make a bowl game, but 8-4 or better, there's no way I can see that this season from the Black Knights.
I can understand that. Here's the one counter argument, and believe me, I don't have a dog in this fight, but I'm just kind of curious your take on this, because this is, if I was going down your line of reasoning there, the one thing that would scare me to death is they were in a little bit of a lull before last season, 6-6, and they step up from being an independent to an American. And Bryson Daly, I think he was a quarterback the year before in 23, right? I believe he was. I'm not certain of that. And this big step forward happened with this new offensive coordinator they got last year. And he's still there. And they went from their passing game was just night and day different. Now, he does have a new quarterback. Who knows? And you objectively said he might be a better passer. Who knows? So that's the one thing that would scare me. Have I kept you up, I don't know, one sleepless night thinking about that, or you getting past that one real quick?
And there's definitely a valid concern with the explosivity in the pass game if it's there, but they just don't pass enough unless they're gonna.
But the OC being back, the guy that was the difference was the offense in 24 versus 23, and that OC is back. And you make a great point about the offensive line and the OL coach, but are you not worried about the OC's ability to get past some of these tougher teams?
I look at the schedule being so much stiffer. North Texas is emerging. The road trips, there's like five road trips that they could lose. Yeah, this is a lot tougher schedule, I think, as well. I think Army's going to be a good team, but I just think that we're going to see some regression based on the talent that they lost.
Okay, fair. So, Robert, we loved this team. Both our models loved this team last year, too. And now Duck's just being the turd in the punch bowl and just saying, it's a new year, guys. Get used to it. So, are you going to push back at all on that?
I think one of the reasons why our models loved Army and Navy so much was the strengths of their quarterback, right? Like Bryson Daly last year, yeah, he was a quarterback. There was times when sometimes just being able to throw to someone who's completely wide open for 20 yards is massive. You really can't underrate how big that is, how game-changing just a pass like that can be. And I think that's something Army has lacked. I don't think Army has it this year. I think they had it last year, but I don't think they have it this year. And I think that actually has a huge outsized impact on this. I would shy away from playing with I'd shy away from playing an over on Army. I don't know if I'd want to play an under, but yeah, the bottom could fall out a little bit here, right? Army has had some rough years. I don't know about making a bowl. I don't know if they'll probably make a bowl, but could I see a 7-6, a 7-5, a 6-6 Army? I could see that, something like that. You've got some rough games here. I don't know. I'd probably leave it. I wouldn't touch this. I think I'm going under, but I'll probably leave this alone.
Yeah, Duck, you'd make a good point about there's a lot of losable games on here, too. Not just outright losses, but boy, they got to run not really a gauntlet, but it's a pretty narrow path to get to that 8th win.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is my favorite play of the American Conference. the Mean Green, not to be confused with the Green Wave of Tulane, the Mean Green of North Texas. I believe in Denton, Texas, if I'm correct here, just
Denton
north of
County,
Dallas.
yeah, North
Yeah.
Dallas.
Or is Robert and his pulser pulling my note? Is that a Denton County? Is that
Denton County, yeah.
okay? All right. Next episode, we'll a full demographic breakdown of that and where that district is going in 2028.
Yeah.
Third season under Eric Morris, 20th in FBS Ryan in 23 and 7th in 24. This is not retained Ryan. This is after last season. So this mark like right here for last year was 7th in all of FBS. Hang on to that thought in just a moment. So Josh Hoover, who had a really good season last year, got some horrible career advice and transferred to Virginia. Not sure what that's about. So our new quarterback is either one of two gentlemen with a pretty long last name, either Reese Poffenbarger from Miami or Drew Mestemaker, who was on this team last year. He had a 149 apex in games against Texas Tech, Wyoming, and mostly Texas State as a true freshman. Here's where I am not so concerned about the uncertainty at the quarterback position. We've had 2 years of Eric Morris, and he's been 20th in FBS and 7th in FBS in Ryan at the end of the season. The guy can scheme up a passing game. I believe he was at Incarnate Word. Is that correct? He went to Washington State with Cam Ward, right? I think this is the kid, right?
Yeah, and he coached at Incarnate Word as well.
Yep. Yeah. So he's a proven guy as far as I'm concerned. So his defense is stunk. Negative 9.2 and a negative 7.6. Here's why I love this team so much. They bring in this guy, Skylar Cassidy. I haven't seen that spelled this way before. At Sam Houston in 2024, he was at Abilene Christian in 22 and 23. Look what this guy did at Sam Houston in 1 year. He took the Sam Houston defense from 5th in Conference USA to 1st. This Sam Houston defense was legit. That Sam Houston defense with Conference USA talent would have been 3rd based on the power ratings in the American. He has 6 guys that followed him from Sam Houston to this team from his defense. This is like the sneaky. This is not quite Corey Heatherman to Miami, but it's getting there. This is a big move. It's not just a really good defensive coordinator. He's got like half of his defense from a really good Sam Houston defense is here. 6.5, over's taking some money, wisely so. I love this. This is my play. Is over, without a doubt. The offense is proven. I can't ask anything more than what I'm getting here on the defensive improvements. This is my best bet. Now, Duck, you've cited a lot of plays already. First of all, presuming that you agree with me, which you're allowed to disagree, makes for better podcasting. But was this one of your plays here on the Mean Green?
Yeah, over 6.5 and 22-1 to win the conference outside shot. I think that there are so many things that set up well for North Texas, but the offense is always going to be there based on the system that they run. And Reese Poffenbarger was a fantastic FCS quarterback at the University of Albany for several seasons before he transferred to Miami to back up Cam Ward, and will fit absolutely right in here. Mestemaker was a guy who stuck around and played the last couple of games in the bowl. I know he played the bowl game against Texas State and really kept them competitive in that First Responders Bowl last season. They've got a lot of pop. They got a lot of pop in the skill rooms. McGill, the running back, is solid. They get another guy who transfers in, Jaden Becks, who will be 1-2 punch there at running back. Probably 5 capable receivers that they can spread the ball around to. The O-line is shored up okay. Nothing really jumps off the page, but they'll get the ball in their hands quickly, and they'll be okay in pass protection. But this starts and ends with the defense. Skylar Cassidy comes in from Sam Houston State. They had an exceptional defense, and they turned that defense into an elite Conference USA defense quickly based on the fact that they had just moved up from the FCS ranks. And 6 of their players that were on that Sam Houston starting defense are here. They get a couple guys at the edge rush position that transfer in from Wyoming and South Alabama that'll be productive. The linebacker room is probably the best in the American. Pass coverage units look really solid, and they've got plenty of depth. I think they're shored up nicely. I think North Texas is in position to really have a statement season. Wouldn't surprise me if they start 5-0, to be honest with you, before catching South Florida after the bye week. And so I think if you're looking at a team that can really make a step from one year to the next, I've talked about a lot of the teams in this league that have taken a little bit of a step back and are coming down to the pack. This is one of those teams that has just disappointed for years due to their defense not being able to get off the field. But that will be anything but this year. I think you've got a guy drawing it up on the whiteboard. You've got an infuse of talent that is really solid, something North Texas hasn't had here in some time. Mean Green are definitely a team that I think will surprise plenty of people this season around college football, but won't be surprising to some of the people on this show.
No. And Robert, at this point, since we're about halfway through, I will point out you've got get my laser pointer here. There we go. From this point forward, we've got a lot of teams we haven't talked about, which is a good sign if you're North Texas. This back half is pretty generous. Once you get to Charlotte, Navy, okay, UAB, Rice, and Temple, that's a nice path, man. If you can end with 4 out of 5 at a minimum here, it's a good spot. So, Duck and I are super bullish here. Are you gonna push back?
Yeah, I'd like them to go over. I'm not sure if I'm with you on to win the conference. I think this team has been like on the cusp of being really good, and you could see it in a lot of the stuff. I remember betting on them last year versus Texas Tech, and they got blown out, but they looked like they had 149 apex against Texas Tech, right? That's not nothing. So they've looked really good, and they've looked like they've been just a piece or two away for a while. I think maybe they might finally have it. I'm slightly less worried about the quarterback situation. One, this guy already, the freshman already was he already played a couple games last year. He did stuff, so that's fine. But at the same time, with some of these offensive schemes, this is literally just scheme a guy open, throw it past him, and then call it a day, right? That's what this North Texas team is. It's always been very heavily on offense. Their defense has been really rough, but if they can improve their defense, which they clearly have, yeah, this could be a tough team to deal with. This could be a tough out. I like the over 6.5, but I don't know if I'm there to win the conference. I think this could be one of the top teams in the conference, but I'm definitely not there on to win the conference.
Albany, is there an offensive coordinator or somebody that's come up before? Was there anybody any coach from Albany that I might know of, Duck? And if not,
nothing comes to mind offhand.
Okay. All right. I might just be confusing it with... what about the guy that was at Old Dominion? Where did he come? Fordham. He was at Fordham, right?
Yeah, I think he was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I might be confusing those guys. Yeah, just New York. I'm in California. It's all the same. Take no offense, Robert. I know that's right across the lake from you. All right, this is interesting here. East Carolina. I was expecting a bad season. They did have a bad season. Then they fired Houston. Blake Harrell was interim. He went 5-1. They made him the permanent coach. Keaton Hauser, former of Michigan State, in his first year here had 97 apex, which is really good considering this conference. The defense loses a lot. What is it? This number right here is actually worth in North Texas, which is really concerning. Harrell is a defensive guy, I think. Isn't he a former, or was he the defensive coordinator? Yeah.
He was, and he was named the interim.
Okay. Little concern there. Season win total is 6.5. Under is 150. I say this from a position of seeing it up close not go well. I want to see the former interim coach as the full-time guy before I bet. You might remember Clay Helton with a really nice close to the 2015 season at USC. Literally 3 games into his career as the permanent guy, people are saying, okay, how much is USC going to pay to fire this guy 4 games into his contract? So I'm just going to wait and see. There wasn't anything really too compelling either way, but that just makes this just a wait and see. I could be just a little too timid on that, but there's nothing really compelling on the Pirates for me. Duck, do you see anything more than I do here?
I wanted to love this team so badly when I was deep diving ECU earlier in the summer, and I really did. I really wanted to get behind them as this next team to make a step. And I thought about how they blew 3-score leads against App State and Liberty, and I looked at how they fired Mike Houston and brought Blake Harrell into the mix. You think, man, this team got on a roll after that. Maybe he's the guy. Did they get on a roll because of that, or is it because they played Temple, FAU, Tulsa, and North Texas? and that's why they got on a roll. And I think it was more that I'm really concerned about the portal losses. They lose so many key people either via the portal or graduation. Rajay Harris, their extremely talented running back, who's second all time in program history in rushing yards, is gone. They had two really big physical secondary players that were not afraid to stick their nose in there and support the run game, along with providing lockdown pass coverage. Gone. You've got guys like CJ Mims who are gone. Mike Edwards at linebacker is gone. Chase Soul, the exceptional receiver, goes to Iowa State. It's just, there's so much talent that was lost. And I think they really did their best to try to get some guys in. And so there are some things that can work with ECU, but I just need to see it on the field before I really want to put my hard-earned money into this team really making strides. I actually like Caton Hauser, the quarterback. I think he threw the ball around pretty well. He just had way too many turnovers, turnover-worthy plays, bad decision-making, whatever you want to call it. He just did way too much of that last year, as evident by his 11 interceptions. The problem with a team that runs the air raid, and they actually ran the ball pretty well, and they were even run heavy at times, but why can't you convert in the red zone? And time again, ECU got down into the red zone, and they couldn't punch it in. The numbers will stun you. They had 49 red zone attempts. 12 of them ended with 0 points, and 10 of them ended in field goals.
Oh my god!
So you're only scoring touchdowns half the time, and you're turned away with 0 way too often, and there's some turnovers in there. It was just bad situational football, and the execution was such to where they have to improve that immediately because they lose some talent on the defense, and I don't think this bunch is going to be able to rely on a defense that could get a little bit of pressure, and they could stop the run fairly well with the support from the secondary. I just really don't see it this year. I didn't play the win total either way. Again, I really wanted to love this team, but when you look at the schedule, now with what's going on at BYU, I think that now becomes a lot more winnable. I think hosting Army is winnable. Coastal Carolina and Campbell are winnable. And Tulsa, Temple, and Charlotte are winnable. But those last three are really tough. And specifically the last game of the season against FAU, because if you're not 10-1 or 9-2 and playing for a conference championship and you've already achieved bowl eligibility, I don't know what they're showing up for in that last game of the season after likely losses against Memphis and UTSA. So to me, it just seems like a bunch that's fighting and clawing and scratching to get to 6-6. I think they're a bowl team. 6-6 or 7-5 seems about right, but I don't think ECU makes a step this year, and I really wanted them to.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Robert, any thoughts on the first year of the interim guy that becomes the head coach? Or do you have the same concerns that I do, or?
No, so basically, he was only for games 8 through 13 and the bowl. He was 5-1, including the win in the bowl against NC State, and that's not nothing. NC State, and they play NC State actually in the opener, week 1. So it's a team they literally just beat. They play them again, and that line has actually shrunk. It started at 12.5, now it's down to 11.5. So there's clearly some sharp money on ECU there. But now that being said, NC State, not the greatest ACC teams, right? So we can look past that. And I think there is some value on them week 1 against NC State. But past that, I'm not going to... I think this team could make some improvements. I think Caton Hauser, he was actually pretty good last year. He wasn't bad, especially when you ignore the first kind of few games and then you look at the end. I think, yeah, if you can win NC State, you can beat BYU, you could be at Coastal. I think this could be a sneakily kind of good team. I don't know if I necessarily see them as the top team in the conference, but would it surprise me if this team went like 8-4 and like their only losses were to like Tulane and maybe UTSA? There might not be, like, if they're able to get through NC State, if they are, then I think you start looking at 9 or 10-2. right? Like you look at 9-3-10-2, right? Because at that point, it's who else is taking them down? Okay, sure, there's the off spot, right? There's Tulane and there's Memphis and then there's UTSA and maybe FAU. But there is suddenly a lot of those, they're clearly not getting swept in all four of those. Suddenly they're only losing one or maybe two of those, right? So I think there's a path here for this team to not be bad. I just don't know if they're going to be strong enough. I think taking over mid-season is never an easy task. Very few people have actually been able to turn around a program mid-season, except for this. But to be fair, he already had a lot of stuff he's working with, right? You talk about the 3-score leads against App State and Liberty, and they blew those, and that's one of the reasons why that's why the head coach got fired. There are already pieces there. He just fixed the pieces. Now I think it's coming down to, okay, how do we build from here? And I think it's a possibility he might be able to do it. Week 1, NC State, that's going to be a huge game. I can't wait to see this game, or at least see what happens in this game, and we'll go from there. But no, there's a chance they could be not bad here.
My problem is they only returned 2 starters on defense, and they did pretty well against the run last season. And if they can't stop the run, that pass coverage unit could get torched. I think they'll be in a lot of high-scoring games this year. The way I would play East Carolina this season is I'd look to bet overs.
Oops.
Because they're going to go lightning fast offensively.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my keyboard got a little excited there. Okay, next, Rice. Boy, I'm not really enjoying what I'm seeing from Rice. The new head coach, Scott Abel, he was at Davidson. Let me see. Yeah, so 35-18 in conference at Davidson, 2 conference titles in 7 seasons. In the last 3 in conference, he was 16-8. And overall, he was 0-6 in the playoffs. I don't get why we have this guy. Rice has money. They're like a top 10 academic program in the country. They're in like the energy capital of the world outside of Saudi Arabia. They've got to have money. I don't understand what they're doing hiring this guy. Their new OC, he's a first-time OC. It's his first time coaching FBS. This, man, bum list alert here. The new quarterback, Chase Jenkins, was a quarterback in 23. They liked him so much there that they moved the wide receiver in 24. This is going to work out great under a first-time offensive coordinator and this guy who was okay, decent at FCS. Yikes. The new defensive coordinator, John Kay, was linebacker coach here. Of course, it's the first time him being a defensive coordinator. What does Rice spend money on? It's not like this sounds like UCLA, but UCLA spends a lot of money on basketball at least. Does Rice just spend it on like research? I don't know how it works. What are they doing here? Week 1 at Louisiana, I don't like the Owls' chances there. I don't like anything here. Even at 3.5, which is a small number, the over's taking money. I might just be way off here. I don't know. It's hard. These last 6 teams, this is going to seem like a lifetime, guys, because there's not a lot here, but this is one that's worth talking about. This is a really bad situation. I've got a mediocre, maybe okay FCS coach. I've got a quarterback who was playing wide receiver because he sucked at quarterback the year before. His offensive coordinator is a first-time OC. The defensive coordinator is a first-time DC. What is there to like here? 3.5 is a low number. The over's taking money, so I'm getting plus money to go under here. I'm looking long at the under here. Duck, you seem to have gone pretty deep in the American. Did you go this deep and fade Rice here?
I didn't fade Rice. I think Rice is really up against it from a recruiting standpoint because they are recruiting in a hotbed area, but their academia standards are so high that they can't get people to qualify to attend the college. And so you find that you're, as the Harvard of the South, as they call it, you're just up against it for the type of athletes that you're trying to recruit here. So they decided to go in a different direction, do something a little bit different. Scott Abel has a tremendous amount of experience coaching athletes that are non-scholarship athletes. He coached for some time at the Division III level and had some success there. And then while he did coach at Davidson, which is FCS, they play in the non-scholarship Pioneer Football League. And so while they're in FCS competition, they do not provide athletic scholarships. So everybody is there, and you're up against it from recruiting based on your peers because you're recruiting a non-scholarship league. So everybody who's there is walking on or paying their own way or whatever else. So the athletes that you're recruiting and the type of mentality of the people that you're compiling your football team with is just different, and he's used to it. Now, the offense is going to be very dynamic, and it's going to be very quirky. It's going to be nothing like you've seen from Rice in years prior. They run an inverted triple option. They led FCS in running 4 times during his tenure at Davidson. They have a tremendous amount of explosivity because the offense is unique and hard to prepare for. They do a lot of pre-snap motion. They do a lot of window dressing with motioning running backs out and other players back in. At times, you'll have any one of 3 ball carriers that could have the ball on any one play. And they're truly undecided at quarterback. There's actually 3 guys, according to camp reports, that could be at the helm with Drew Devlier, Lucas Shearhorn, and Chase Jenkins, and they're really undecided. So I think they're trying to figure out who's going to run this system best. I definitely think it'll take some time to really have it firing on all cylinders, but this is going to look nothing like what we saw from Rice the last 5 seasons under Bloomgren. And it's just going to be different. It might take a little bit of time to really get it coming together, but for what Rice has to recruit up against and for what sort of roadblocks are in their way to get athletes to come to play there, I think this is as good of a hire as you're going to find. Now, they're going to shrink games down. They're going to try to possess the football. They're going to try to play keep away initially. They're really going to try to play kind of an Army style where you limit the possessions, you keep your defense on the sideline. And nobody has really seen a tremendous amount of film on this offense unless you're really diving into the weeds deeply. And at 14 or so, I don't know if it's necessarily a terrible thing to think that Rice can go in there and hang in there with Louisiana, who lost so much production. We can get into them later, but I don't know if Rice is going to be an exceptionally good football team this year, but there's a lot of shots on goal. Prairie View A&M, they will win. At Charlotte is winnable. Hosting FAU is winnable. UAB is winnable. There are chances for this team to notch a few wins. I think 4-8 is probably a little more likely, but I'm not dying to play this win total either way. I would not touch this team to win the league. The problem with Rice defensively is that they had a great defensive coordinator, Brian L. Smith, who really turned their pass coverage units around. Rice was so porous against the pass for years, and he really shored up the pass coverage units. And he's off to another school, which we'll talk about here down the line. And so defensively, I do have a few concerns on how they're going to hold up. I'm concerned about their depth defensively and how they're going to hold up over the course of the entire season. I'm not in love with what they did in the portal, which is just such a big component now of it when every team has 35 new players. But I think the coaching hire is good. The offense is going to be very dynamic and unique compared to what we've seen before, and I think it'll give them a chance to at least remain competitive. So no real opinion on the win total, but it'll certainly be something I'll be tuned into this year.
Wow, I'd love that you bring that kind of knowledge. And I'm still going to bet the under because, Robert, as I said, bum list alert. If this guy, I can't tell you how badly I want a guy that was at quarterback in 23 and they moved him to wide receiver in 24. I want him to start at quarterback in 25, just for the storyline alone. Maybe it just makes me a jerk. I live in Newport Beach. I can't help it. Are you as down on Rice as I am? But down in a compelling way. This could be really a good watch.
Yeah, that's insane. Starting a wide receiver at quarterback is nuts. And I don't think I've ever seen an example of it this ending. In the NFL, in college, I think there was a game where there was a COVID game where I can't remember which team it was. It might have been the Broncos. All of their quarterbacks went down with COVID because they were all doing quarterback things together and they all got COVID. So as a result, they had to start a wide receiver at quarterback, and I think that went really badly. So, no, yeah, that should be an interesting watch. Again, he probably needs some more time here. He needs a chance to rebuild. I will say, the fact that 0-3, basically an okay-ish D2 record, and then 0-6 in the playoff, yeah, that screams to me, as Duck is saying, developmental league, basically, walk-on players, no scholarships. These aren't heavily recruited players. This is like last chance you in some ways, right? It's this is your last chance to try to make it in football. If not, or you want to play, you're doing it for the love of the game, right? That kind of stuff. And the fact that 0-6 means in the playoffs means that the second you get into the playoffs, you get absolutely crushed by teams that actually are legitimate, right? and legitimately good recruited teams. Now, he will have recruiting resources at Rice, but maybe just not right now. And maybe it's going to take a while to do this. This seems like a total rebuild, and I think we're not there yet. I think he's going to start building this up. But yeah, if you're in a position where you have to start a wide receiver at quarterback for a season, that's not a good start. That's not a great starting position.
I'm trying to figure out. Look at the schedule here. Would I want to just like maybe catch 20 minutes of that game against Prairie View if I could get it, just to see like what this offense could do when it's like at its most fun? As you have me kind of sold on this unique offense, Duck. But would it be worthwhile just trying to see like where you can see like its best proof of concept in year one?
I absolutely would, and I wouldn't put any stock in the Scott Abel playoff record at Davidson. Again, they are in the non-scholarship Pioneer Football League. They're not competing on the same level as any of the other leagues that offer scholarships. It's just Valparaiso's in that league, Butler, Marist, Presbyterian College. It's just really bad football. A lot of those teams are power rated at middle tier Division II, and you look at the gap between Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Kent State. It's that sort of gap when you're looking at North Dakota State, Montana State, and then anyone else in the Pioneer Football League. It's such bad football, and he made it at least palpable at Davidson in that league. I don't know. I would say yes, tune into that or catch the highlights. At least get plugged into what that offense could be, because the offense will be fun to watch, and I think they'll be a little bit more competitive against the spread. The other thing, too, is look at how they played last year against Tulane, Connecticut, and Memphis. They didn't get blown out by those teams, and they beat Navy. Now, it was a good situation for Rice with Navy coming off the hangover against Notre Dame, but they didn't really play that bad the last half of the season, in my opinion.
Fair. All right. Who played bad all of last season is the Blazers of UAB. This is one of those things. It's only Trent Dilfer's third year. It's been like it's a dog years thing. It's got to be. It feels like 10 if you're a UAB fan. A spry 7-17 overall record for him. This is fascinating. Significant bad luck last year. Significant bad luck the year before. That's concerning. That's kind of surprisingly Iowa has usually good luck, and that's just because they execute so well on one side of the ball. I think this is the other side of that. Let's not forget that Dilfer is an offensive guy, so how's his side of the ball done? The offensive rating for this program was 6.2 under Bryant Vincent. He left, and it's since lost 10.3 points in just 2 seasons since then. Not what you want. Jalen Kitna, 77 Apex is his first year starting. It's his junior season. He's a former SEC guy. I want to see a lot more than that. He finally, I'm not even going to say the guy's name, I don't even remember it, but they had a high, literally, Dilfer's first defensive coordinator was his defensive coordinator from high school. They finally fired him. I don't even care who they got. It's going to be an upgrade, but still, look at these awesome wins. These are all at home, by the way. Alcorn State, Tulsa, and Rice. Congratulations on that. That's 2 teams that fired their head coach. 4.5. The under's taking money. I said that's fairly valued, so they must have a really easy schedule here. Easy team to make fun of, probably an easy team to find spots to fade, but if I'm saying it's fairly valued, when I was a little more deep in thought, I probably just, I don't know, it probably comes down to this Akron game. That's going to set the game of football back about a couple of years. Just bad football, as Duck was talking about the Pioneer League. Maybe the Blazers should be in the Pioneer League, Duck?
I feel like they're hanging on for dear life with Dilfer. I don't know why he's still here. It just doesn't seem like an experiment that's worked out up to this point. And I'm not thrilled about what this team brings back this upcoming 2025 season. Now, I will say this. They made a very interesting hire with their new defensive coordinator, Steve Russ, who was the defensive coordinator at Air Force. Then he coached in the NFL, and then he was the associate head coach back at Air Force for some time. And so who does UAB play on the schedule this upcoming season? They play Navy, they play Army, and they play this Rice team that's going to run the triple option. So they at least have a guy scheming it up defensively who coached in that system for years. And I think that we'll see them defend the triple a little bit better than what you might expect from a defense that is really crappy otherwise. So I think against the number, it could be worth looking at a team that might have some competence because the guy drawing up the game plan knows how to defend it, which I think is crucial. I think when you look at the offense, I mean, we've got Jalen Kitna coming back. I think he was left out there high and dry at points last season when games got out of hand and he was still out there throwing the ball. So maybe his stats look a little bit better than they were. But I wasn't super impressed necessarily with the completion percentage. I felt like a lot of the passes were shorter check down passes. A lot of it was thrown to the running backs. That running back, BB, is no longer there. Some of the receivers are gone. You lose a significant amount of whatever offensive punch that you may have had. And a full offensive line rebuild. And it's a huge red flag because you've got guys that come in that haven't played a lot. Now, you've got guys from Duke, Kansas State, Colorado, and South Carolina, but we don't know what they are because they're just unproven. They haven't played any snaps. So, I mean, they had a jersey on for a while, but not a lot of game experience. So, could be interesting. I could see this being a situation that could just go really sideways. I think the defense and what they don't return, you got this lack of returning production defensively. And look at the defensive metrics on the screen. They were bad last year on defense. There's no two ways about it. And now you're portaling in these Power 5 cast-offs from the ACC or Rutgers or Boston College. It's just, I just don't know what they have. I don't know. One thing I thought we would have seen a lot of last year out of UAB is I really thought we would have seen some quit. And they really played pretty well against Charlotte. They beat Rice. They played well in the last game of the season against Charlotte. They played well against Connecticut. They played well for a significant portion of their game against South Florida. They didn't quit on him. So maybe there's something there, but I'm not willing to bet into it. If I had to do anything here, I'd go under 4.5 because I just don't think the experiment is going the way they expected it to.
Yeah, I would say that they quit once the portal opened.
Oh, for sure they did.
Yeah, so they win 3, and obviously schedules vary from year to year. But Robert, you beat Alcorn State and Tulsa and Rice, 2 teams that fired their coaches. What do you even? I don't even see what you build on to get to 5 wins. Do you?
I think it was like, for some of those coaches, it's, oh man, we lost to UAB. We should fire our coach. And I think if you're UAB, I think you should be kind of like, hey, yeah, maybe that's a problem. No, honestly, I don't know why he's still the coach here. This has been not good. They haven't even gotten close to a bowl game. They haven't gotten within 2 wins of a bowl game since he's been the head coach here. I guess you give it a 3rd year, but this is a pretty hot seat here. It might not take much here to push this over the edge. Alabama State, whatever. Navy, I'm assuming Navy's, yeah, okay, maybe the coach knows how to defend against the triple option, but can they actually defend against the triple option? I'm going to go with no. Like, there's a difference between knowing how to defend against it and actually doing it and having the people to do it, right? And then, like, Akron. Like, you lose to Akron, why are you, if you start 0-3, and Akron has been improving, they've been not bad. But if you lose to Akron, like, what are you doing here? Why don't you just fire the guy already? Does he really exist for the Tennessee game, or are they firing off the bye before they get pounded by another triple option team? Like, we might be in the final days of Trent Dilford here. 4.5, I think, is fairly valued because I think some of that is probably penciling in the coach. It sounds crazy, but some of that might be penciling in the coach getting fired and there being like an interim head coach, and then they could win a couple of these games. But that's basically it.
Yeah, that 5th win, I just don't see it. We haven't talked about, not to spoil it, we have some teams to talk about still, but they got to be favored over Akron, though, right, Duck?
Certainly, I think they'll beat Akron.
Okay.
Probably 7-point favorites over Akron.
Yeah, not that I have interest in watching that game.
I have an Akron win total under, so I'll watch it.
Okay. Okay. All right, FAU. And the slug at the bottom, I think there might be something to look at here just because we've got a personality here. And I know what the style is going to be, and I think that there's a path to actually beating some teams just by having an identity. So Zach Kitley he wasn't the Western Kentucky OC. He was the
Texas Tech OC.
Texas Tech, pardon me.
But he was Western Kentucky a few years ago.
Sorry, yeah. Clearly I was doing this one late at night. This team had some bad luck last year significantly, so there should be some regression. So Caden Veldkamp, who was the quarterback at Western Kentucky, who Kitley had probably played a role in bringing in, 108 apex there. I think that was probably second in Conference USA behind what's his name, Salter. The defense was really bad, and this sea of red means that you're starting over. The good news is there's not a lot of good defenses in this neighborhood of the American, so you don't have to be much to be serviceable and grab some wins. Season win total is 4.5. The under's taking some money. I'm gonna watch this season. I don't feel strongly enough to play it or even say that they're undervalued. But again, I see just with an identity with Kitley and Veldkamp, I think that's much more than what this program has had. So I can see them. I don't know. They can beat some teams that otherwise you wouldn't think of. A stronger opinion on this one than I have there, Duck?
The offense is going to go blazing fast. It's going to be a complete 180 from what they ran the last previous couple of seasons under Tom Herman, and certainly look different than what they had last year with Cam Fancher. But Zach Kitley comes in. They bring in Caden Veldkamp from Western Kentucky. They bring in their top receiver, Easton Messer, who's going to catch 110 passes this year. We've seen this before, and we saw it with Western Kentucky when they brought in Bailey Zappi, and the offensive coordinator was Zach Kitley, and they brought in all the receivers, and it was absolutely a high-flying affair. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a team that goes blazing fast. We're going to see them try to put up a ton of points. They're going to throw the ball around. The defense will mimic that of 11 folding chairs out there. It's going to be so stinking bad. They couldn't stop anything last season. Their pass defense numbers were just atrocious. They couldn't stop the run. They lose all of their defensive production with only 2 starters returning throughout all 3 levels of the defense. And I just think it's going to be a real disaster defensively this year for FAU. Their defensive metrics were bad last year on with an offense that played very slow and methodical, and now you're going to run lightning quick. And if it's 3-and-out city and your defense is left hanging out there to dry, it's just not a lot to take to have this go really bad and you give up 500 yards per season, or excuse me, per game on the season defensively. When you look at the schedule, I think Florida A&M they'll win, and you got this regional rivalry with FIU that they've had success with in the past. But I think FIU is a little bit more emerging than most, and so it's a coin flip game in my opinion. And there's a case to be made that you could potentially get Rice, UAB, and Tulsa. But the way the second half of the schedule lines up, I think it's just brutal with South Florida, Navy, Tulane, Connecticut, and ECU. I don't have them winning any of those games. So if you're going to go over, you're going to have to sweep FIU, Rice, UAB, and Tulsa. And I just don't know that defensively they'll have the horses to really do a lot of that. I think this is a team that's probably a year away defensively. The offense will be a lot of fun to watch. They're going to throw the ball around a ton. Could be 5-7. I actually did play under the win total earlier in the summer. I took it at a little bit different price, but I did go under 4.5 for FAU. I just don't think they're going to be a good football team this year.
Yeah, again, when you've got spots for a good play here and there, but basically, I like how you narrow that down. Basically, you're betting, what is it, like probably they call it about even money, that they're going to win all 4 of those games that you said. That doesn't make sense. But again, Robert, in this bottom part of the American, there's a lot of cheap real estate to be made up pretty quickly just by having identity. And with this kind of coach and quarterback, that's going to get you somewhere.
Yeah, actually. So I will actually say that again. I actually, for my work and stuff publicly available on Twitter, we actually do a lot of work with FAU in terms of polling. So I do have some ties to FAU myself. I will say that I like this team. They've really tried to do stuff. They tried to do the Tom Herman hire. I kind of liked the Tom Herman hire at the time, but it just never worked. It never panned out. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it was a bad fit. Maybe he just didn't have the resources he needed to. I don't know, but it just never worked out, and they were always behind the 8 ball. And I don't think they even made a bowl with Tom Herman. So now you've got Zach Kitley here. Again, we all remember that Western Kentucky 2021 season with Bailey Zappi. Just what a fun offense that was, putting up ridiculous video game numbers pretty much every week there. Just a fun team to watch and a fun team to root for in that season. And the best part is he took the quarterback from Western Kentucky for them this year. He brought them in. So I think the offense will be good. I think the defense is a problem, but I think if you can at least maybe somewhat improve it from last year, or at least keep it the same. Like, looking at some of these games, it's abundantly clear how they lost. Like, they lost to Michigan State 16-10. They lost by 6. That was week 1 last year. If you're telling me that if you had Caden Veldkamp throwing behind there, you think that wouldn't have been a loss? Like, they would have got an extra touchdown there for sure. A lot of these games, yeah, they had a lot of points scored in them, but they were able to score some in some of these other ones. I think if you have a solid identity of we're the air raid team, we're going to pass for 300, 400 yards a game, and you start building on that, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to exploit teams that are really bad defending the pass. And I think if you're able to do that, then yeah, I think you can actually win some games. I don't know if the 4.5 is something I'd play. I'd probably play the over. I would say that we're not particularly high on Maryland, and it wouldn't surprise me if Loxley just completely forgot to prep for this game, and it was just like, yeah, whatever, we'll beat them. Like that spread was 16.5. It's down to 14 now. It's dropped 2 points in a few days here. So clearly the market believes something's going on in that game, or just all the spreads are tightening. I'm not sure. But again, you've got FIU, you got Rice, you got UAB, South Florida. Like, I see a path to a bowl, but I don't know much past that. I think there are some good teams. I think if once they figure out how to stop this offense, which I feel like eventually they will, you're going to lose some of your power there, and especially if the defense doesn't catch up. So I'm excited to watch this season. I think it's going to be really fun watching this they play on, I think, the Friday. No, they play. No, they play first thing on Saturday, right? They're the first. Yes, they're the first series. They're the first games on Saturday. They're in that big noon kickoff.
Is it the big noon kickoff game? No, I'm joking.
We keep making a joke because it's clearly not the big. There is one big noon kickoff game. It's not that one though. But no, it's yeah. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see what this team can do this year. It's going to be nice to have an actually exciting FAU team, especially because I go down there sometimes. So it'd be cool to see that.
You wanna look at something that is hilarious in terms of a look back line. Last year, week 2, this FAU team was a 2.5 point favorite over Army. Boy, that season didn't turn out that way, did it? For either team. My goodness. All right, good coach. Rough situation, Tim Albin. I didn't even realize that Charlotte won 5 games last season. They really didn't even have a horrible loss here. Let me go over their losses here. JMU, North Carolina, Indiana, Navy, Memphis, Tulane, USF. There's not a bad loss in there. Maybe not a controversial take. If you've seen any kind of video of Biff Poggi, he probably had everybody in that whole building hating him. That's got to be why they fired him. All right, so Tim Albin comes in fresh off a MAC conference title. The new quarterback is Connor easy for me to say, Connor Harrell. 2 starts in North Carolina last year. Not enough for an apex, but career apex at 83. That's passable for this part of the American. This is a rough start for Mr. Albin here. This is last in the conference in 25, Ryan. Really a mix and match here on the offensive line. 1 returning starter, 1 backup from the program. You have a starter from JMU, a starter from Kennesaw State. As they say in the car business, your mileage will probably vary on that. And a guy from JUCO. Okay. A bad defense is doing a complete teardown. First-time defensive coordinator, from what I think. Like I said, no bad losses. The under's getting crushed here, under 3.5. I can't really argue with it. I'm not going to bet against Tim Albin in this spot. Now, he was in a bad situation, and he had a bad team his first year in Ohio, but he got turned around. So, not going to bet against him. Just going to watch this one. Not strong feelings. Duck, you have any stronger feelings than I do on the 49ers here, other than it'll be a rough season?
No, rough season and tough schedule. The win total actually opened at 2.5, so I think it was bet over 2.5, and so then odds were just adjusted accordingly. But just so much on the drawing. I guess you can hang your hat on the fact that they have 5 linebackers that are in the room that came over from University of Ohio, so could be something to maybe anchor the defense there. But it's a full rebuild on the D line, and maybe they're better at stopping the run. Gave up 5.2 yards per carry last season, and at times were just gashed on the ground. But you alluded to the fact that they played a real lineup of tough opponents, and it's just kind of what happens when you're at a talent disadvantage. Still unsettled at quarterback. We've got Connor Harrell that's in there and battling with Grayson Loftus, who comes in from Duke, and this other guy, Zach Wilkie, who is a JUCO guy that's vying for QB1. So who really knows where that's going to shake out? I think they'll be able to run the ball a little bit with Henry Rutledge, who showed a little pop last year in limited action. I would guess I don't know. Such a rebuild. It's such a significant rebuild and something that he will be able to do. I know he'll make good on the promise, but it just seems like it's going to take some time for Tim Albin. And they're just up against it. App State and North Carolina early in the season, South Florida, Army, North Texas, ECU, UTSA, Tulane, and Georgia all at the end. I don't know if you win a game the second half of the way. So your winnables are probably Temple, Rice, and Monmouth is going to be a top 10 FCS team, and they have a real senior-laden quarterback that can throw it around. If you're not prepared there, Monmouth is going to bring it. And you're already going to have to elevate your attitude to get up for the in-state rivalry with App State, and then you're hosting North Carolina. So 2 games you got to get up for. So now in week 3, it's like Monmouth is coming to town. Are we really up for this one? They better be careful. That's not a guaranteed win. I don't see a lot of wins on the slate. I think the slate is tough. I think it's probably a good hire long term, but 3-9 looks like the absolute ceiling here.
It does. And I don't like to go against Tim Albin here. Just in general, he's a proven guy. But man, the thing is, it looks to me, I don't see any game where like the spread's going to be less than, aside from maybe Temple, I don't see any game where the spread's less than a touchdown. And Rice, that's it. Robert, you think differently? It's kind of the season's already, the die's been cast on the season, right? If you look at the schedule.
Maybe, but I will say that week 1 against App State, which they are hosting App State now, it's in a neutral place. They are only 7-point underdogs against App State at home.
Really?
So, yeah, and that's actually gone down. It was actually 8 a few weeks ago. I got it at 8. Actually, it's down to 7 already. So clearly, the market is believing a little bit. Now, I suspect that's more of a bet against App State than on Charlotte. So that's fair. But again, Tim Albin is a pretty good coach, right? He took an Ohio team and led them to be a really good team in the MAC. Yes, this is going to be a tough rebuild, and I think I could see them beating App State maybe, and then maybe Monmouth, and then you find another couple wins there. I don't want to underestimate him. This is going to be really tough. I don't think they're going to be able to get back to 5-7 this year, but I could see the over 3.5. Again, it's that. The fact that line against App State is shrinking, I think they might be able to put up a bit of a fight there in that game. Now, the other games, though, again, you've got Army, you've got East Carolina, Georgia for some reason, Tulane, again, for some reason. Again, I'm not sure why. They decided to pick the hardest possible teams there. And you have a couple easier ones, but yeah, I could see 4 or 5 wins. I don't think they're getting to a bowl, but their only chance to even get remotely close to a bowl is probably, honestly, to get over the win total, you probably need to beat App State. So,
yeah, they do. I don't see that happening. I don't know. Were you going to chime in with something, Duck? It looked like it.
They were in the same spot last year, hosting JMU. A lot of pomp and circumstance, a real raw crowd that showed up there in Charlotte, and they just threw up a complete stinker. I don't know. I want to see it on the field. I do. I need to see it on the field.
Yeah.
That game is Friday, basically prime time, 7:00. It's basically one of the first games firing. On top of that, it's Kennesaw State and Wake Forest, so I know which one I'd rather watch.
Yeah, and it's in the NFL stadium too. It's in the NFL stadium in Charlotte.
Oh, cool. Okay.
They don't play their home games there, though, do they? For the most part.
No, they do not.
Okay. Yeah, Phil used to have. No, it just says like a home field advantage. Okay. Another start over here. Temple hires Casey Keeler from Sam Houston State. The new offensive coordinator is Tyler Walker from Montana State, who Duck was nice enough to explain comes from the movie Slow and Slower in terms of their tempo. Not a fan of the quarterback, Giovanni McCoy, who had basically a 58 apex in the Mountain West. They had the worst offense in the American. we hit on this in some of these other ones. When the offense is that bad and you have this many guys returning from in the offensive line, I see this as a negative rather than a positive, in that nobody was really interested in picking over what you have from a higher conference. Now, Duck alluded to this. Brian Smith, the guy who actually did a really good job at Rice, is the defensive coordinator here. I like that. I do not like this. That basically we have no no defensive transfers from Sam Houston followed him to Temple. Now, maybe they're all Texas guys and they just wanted to go to beautiful Denton County. So Robert can talk about him in the next podcast and where Denton County goes in 2028. Philly's probably a harder sell to those guys, but that doesn't bode well for year one here. Season win total is 3.5. Seems fair to me. I don't have strong feelings about this, but I do not like the quarterback as a starting point, and I think there's a rebuild here, but 3.5 isn't a high hurdle. Duck, there's no way you're going to try to talk me into Giovanni McCoy, is there?
I'm not going to try to talk you into Giovanni McCoy per the win total. I will say we are going to see an immediate change in attitude adjustment from Temple. Keeler said immediately in spring practice he instilled the Temple tough sort of attitude back into that program, which was Charmin soft at times last season. The way they played defense was putrid and uninspiring. It was just hard to watch even at home on the television set. It was just so stinking bad to see how Temple just folded their tent early in so many games, week in and week out, and really just so uninspiring over the tenure of Stan Drayton during his 3 consecutive 3-9 campaigns. It was just laissez-faire, uninspiring football. I think that Casey Keeler, who has personal ties to the area and coached at Delaware for some time, and this means a lot to him, I think you are going to see an immediate intensity, attitude adjustment. The way that they play and execute, I think, will be very improved compared to what we're used to. Now, offensively, they're going to be very methodical. At Montana State, they ran 37 seconds between plays. It's unbearably slow at times. We're going to see a ton of 22 personnel, which is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, some 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. They're going to run the ball 65% of the time. The offensive coordinator ran it 68% of the time at Montana State. So it's going to be run heavy here with big bodies. The tight end room, I will say, looks really good. If you go back and look at the rosters, Temple has 5 tight ends. Every one of them is 6'4" or taller. And we've got 270, 250, 275 pounds. They've got a lot of beef in the tight end room. And so we'll see some play action off the run game, and it'll be a lot of short throws to the tight end. They want to trim these games down significantly, play keep away, possess the ball, keep their offense on the field, and keep their defense off of the field. So I think it'll work against UMass, and I think it'll work in their second game of the season against Howard. Probably less likely to work against Oklahoma, although Temple was a lot feistier against their opponents when they played at home than they were on the road last year. So who really knows? I'm not advocating to go over. I just think it'll be a much improved football team. Let me tell you when the time to bet Temple will be. If there's some possible way that Georgia Tech can defeat Clemson in week 3, and it's not that out of the question, as Georgia Tech is just 8.5-point underdogs on the look-ahead lines. I think Georgia Tech's going to be a really good AAC team this year. If Georgia Tech can defeat Clemson in week 3 at home, Temple comes in there and they'll probably be catching 29 or so, and I would be all over Temple to hang within that number. I'm not going to say they're going to win the game, but that would be the hangover spot of the season, and Temple will go in there and just really truncate these games down. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that this year. They've got winnables in the first 2. There's a winnable against Charlotte and Tulsa. Not out of the realm of possibility for this team to be 4-8. I think they'll be a much better football team next year, but we'll just definitely you'll see the improvement on the field immediately.
I just want to understand, just realistically, if this new OC is good, can he make McCoy just good enough to like move the chains and shorten the game? My fear is that this could be a defense that's on the field a lot. Just Giovanni Coy, he scares me to death.
I think they're going to run the ball with Jay
opponent.
Ducker. Yeah, they're going to run the ball with Jay Ducker and Terrace Worthy and Jacquez Smith. They're going to run the ball 65-70% of the time. The rest will be play action short stuff. Not a lot of deep shots. It'll be play action to the tight end. It'll be all dink and dunk and
Okay.
running.
He followed Keeler from Sam Houston too. So, Robert, what on earth was Oklahoma doing? Saying, "Yeah, we'll play at Temple." Did they recruit a guy from like Pennsylvania where they promised this to the kid's mom or something? Yeah, you can see your kid play.
I guess you needed another road game, and they're going to try to get those like freaking flyer miles. I don't know. No, yeah, it is very weird that they decided to fly to Temple. Maybe they also forgot that Temple is not actually in Texas, it's in Pennsylvania. No, yeah, that Georgia Tech is. If Georgia Tech were to beat Clemson, and I think right now they're like 9.5 or 10 or 12, something like that, on that line, two score ish dogs, then yeah, watch out for that line. You got Georgia Tech. They're coming to Georgia Tech. That's 100% a hangover game, right? You have a couple other slots maybe where you could do some damage, but honestly, not a lot. I think even with Casey Keeler, their first season in FBS, Sam Houston did not do particularly well. Because like you look at his record overall in FBS, it's 12-12, which basically means, and I can't remember what was it 2-10 one year and then 10-2 the
I think
next
so.
year? Yeah,
That sounds right.
perfectly balanced as all things should be. But this is the thing, right? I think we're going to see more first year Sam Houston than second year Sam Houston this year. That doesn't mean that second year Sam Houston doesn't exist, and we will see it next year. But I think this year is going to be like Giovanni McCoy should be at Apex at Oregon State. This is not good.
Yeah, you do make a good point though, Duck, about the Brian Smith. I'll put it this way: he's not starting from a bad spot on defense. You made a good point that kind of stuck out to me. That Smith had done a good job at Rice. The only thing that went well there, so of course he had to go. But they kept the linebacker coach. I don't get Rice. I have to say too, and this is just really disappointing. I did like a 90-second deep dive, like how bad is the Rice athletic director? And do you know where he went to school? That school, my school. He went to USC. So I stopped the research really quick and just said, I don't know. I'll just pretend I didn't even look at that. That was just embarrassing. But yeah, good hire longer term. I think we can all agree on that. That this is good. I think, but it could be a little bit of a time here. It's not the quick fix. I'm I need to be convinced on this one. I'll just say this. Tulsa was really sneakily horrible. You had Kent State just reinventing the numbers in terms of like how bad a team can be, and it crowded out just how much shame should have gone to Tulsa's way. This is just a bad freaking team. So their new head coach is Trey Lamb. I'm just going to say that I think Duck's going to make a case for Mr. Trey Lamb. That's just my suspicion, but we'll see. Not to spoil. I have no idea. 5 years. Here's the thing: 17-11 in conference is not great, but he didn't go into good situations. 2 conference titles in 5 seasons. That I like. But the thing is, his whole resume: 5 years as a quarterback coach in FCS, 2 years as an offensive coordinator, and 5 seasons as a head coach in FCS. He's never been FBS. Stop it. Sorry. And he doesn't have a quarterback to work with here. Now maybe there's somebody that I don't know about that Phil Steele can tell us that didn't tell us about. Starting O line is all transfers. Sorry guys, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that. This is a horrible defense last year. It just there's not a lot. 6 starters on defense are transfers. There's I'll put it this way: if you're taking the over here, you're really taking a position in the short term on Trey Lamb. There's some things I like. Again, he's supposedly a good offensive coach, but the overall record and the resume are really thin for me. Duck, this is where you excel and you add so much, and I look to you. Was I right that you're going to make a little case for Trey Lamb, or am I off here?
There's a case for optimism. He was able to quickly rebuild Gardner Webb and also East Tennessee State. And so there is a kind of a shot of adrenaline to this program that they've so desperately needed. I think Central Michigan, FIU, and Tulsa had just the most lethargic, apathetic coaching staffs, and it really McIntyre and Jim McElwain and Kevin Wilson were just grotesque FBS coaches. Didn't connect with their players. no energy and enthusiasm on the sideline. It was just so terrible to watch game in and game out for all three of these programs. So I think when you get a guy in there that's high energy, that can connect with the players and can rally the troops and get people to buy in, there's a chance that there's some marginal and incremental improvement. The problem in this specific case with Tulsa is outside of Kent State and a few others in the CUSA, this defense was just completely way an outlier on the box and whisker plot. You look at 19 plays surrendered of 50 yards or more last season for Tulsa. It was just 42 red zone trips allowed, and that's beyond the 25 touchdowns that were scored outside the red zone. But 42 trips inside the red zone, 35 red zone touchdowns allowed. They allowed 48% on third down last season.
Jesus.
They couldn't stop the run. 5.8 yards per carry in conference play. Why is that important? Because they had a couple non-conference games that they were able to pin down against the run against weaker foes, but 5.8 yards per carry. The secondary, 66% completions allowed, 38 touchdown passes against. Their last 4 games of the season, they surrendered, last 5 games, 45, 59, 38, 63, and 63 points. This team, we talked about UAB and Dilfer's bunch at least not quitting. This group just completely quit and waved the white flag. It was rough. It was really rough to see the chinks in the armor. So, I don't know. I think you get an infusion of portal talent along the defensive line. You get Jadan Burnett, who comes in from Louisiana Tech, who was fairly productive. You get some guys who actually played on the field at Pitt and Florida State. A couple guys from Tulane that transfer in, specifically along the D line. You get a little bit of an influx. Now, Inquavius Dunbar comes back at linebacker. There's a couple other guys that have been in the system a little while, so there's at least a little bit of defensive experience to possibly grasp at, to coach some of these guys a little bit differently, to see some marginal improvement. They lose a ton of explosivity on offense that I think is going to be difficult to replace. Watkins, the running back, was exceptional. Joseph Williams and Camden Benjamin are going to be very hard to replace at the receiver position. You lose 2 of the 3 quarterbacks that rotated in last season, so you're firmly anchored in on Kirk Francis. The running back room looks good. There's really 3 capable guys that they can lean on in the running back room, and instead of running an offense that's oriented around deep vertical passing shots that just didn't connect last season, they're going to run some power packages, a few more rhino packages, and they're going to run the ball. It's a smash mouth spread that they're going to run with Brad Robbins at offensive coordinator. I don't know if it's necessarily going to mean this team's going to be a great team in the win column, and really even against the number. I can tell you right now, I think they'll beat Abilene Christian, and I definitely think that New Mexico State is winnable. I hope they do, because I will look to fade them in week 3 when they host Navy. I think it'll be fool's gold if Tulsa comes into that one 2-0, and then they just get run up by Navy. But Temple's on the slate, FAU's on the slate, UAB's on the slate. There are some chances for this team to win some games if they improve with a good coaching staff throughout the season, but I'm not betting my hard-earned money on it by any stretch. There's a chance that the wow factor is there and this group really connects and they play exquisite football and beat a couple teams that they shouldn't, and maybe they sniff 5 wins, but I'm not exceedingly confident on. I like the higher long term. I think this is exactly what Tulsa needs, because Kevin Wilson was just such a puke to watch on the sidelines.
Yeah, boy. Who besides the Kevin Wilson family shocked that didn't work out? Like, nobody. Come on. Just another bad athletic director. I brought up this point in the the Mountain West preview about how bad San Diego State's pass defense was in particular. So this basically defensive apex plus at 215 basically means that on average every quarterback that they faced was Jaden Daniels when he won the Heisman. And I don't know how many American Conference teams are going to beat Jaden Daniels when he's playing like at his usual game. They have a long way to go. Robert, this is another one that I don't see anything to grasp onto in year 1 for like how they beat even a decent team.
Just showing, and there's looking through some of these lines. It's funny how just out of sync some of these lines are. For example, in the last 4 weeks, now one they covered the spread. That was when they were 15-point underdogs against East Carolina. They only lost at 38-31. They only lost by 7. At UAB, they were plus 2-point underdogs. They lost 59-21. At USF, they were 17-point underdogs. They lost 63-30. And then for some reason they were favorites hosting Florida Atlantic, and they lost 63-16. So these weren't even first of all, whoever job it was at the sportsbook to set lines for Tulsa games last season, they need to not do that ever again. But no, it's like those are bad, and those aren't even good teams. FAU fired their coach. East Carolina, those with their backup, UAB, should have fired their head coach. They lost. They were 3-point underdogs at Temple, and they lost by 10 to another team that fired their coach. Yeah, like it's not good. Now the thing is, Trey Lamb may or may not be good. I'm not completely sure. Someone who has a 66 Apex first year starting, that's concerning. Again, that's really like basement here. Like at New Mexico State is winnable, as is Abilene Christian. But past that, man, I don't know. This gets pretty rough. You got Oregon State maybe, but it's a challenge to get to see 4 wins here. It's definitely a challenge to get to 4 wins.
It could be the UAB. I don't know. That could be the whole, is Dilfer fired yet? And are they playing for the new guy? Or is this just, God, if UAB is just thinking, if we lose, can we just actually just get rid of this guy and just move on? So, I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's not going to be a lot of people watching Tulsa UAB on rivalry weekend. That's not one that's going to get a lot of eyeballs.
Unless you're watching it on TV, on like ESPN Plus, and like it's broken, it's stuck on ESPN News. That's how you're watching that game.
Or you are in the aforementioned Kevin Wilson family, and you really want to see Tulsa lose because they screwed over Dad by firing him after that awesome season they had last year, 3-9. All right, we made it, guys. We made it to the wrap-up questions here. I knew it was going to be a slug. Looking at those last 6 teams, it was not going to be easy, but we made it. One upset involving an American Conference team. I'll let you go first, Duck, since you'll go last on the next one here. You got an upset in mind here?
I do. I am going to say that September 25th, ECU hosts Army and will beat Army.
Wow. Okay, when you said you had one so quickly, I thought you were going to take mine. I'm going to go with South Florida over Boise. That just seems so plausible to me. I won't say likely, but just as we were talking about the kind of spread I'd have to take on Boise, I talked myself into that one pretty quick. Robert, you're upset involving an American team.
I'm gonna go with Tim Albin. Tim Albin over App State. Charlotte over App State.
Okay. And Robert, I will let you go first in terms of the conference championship game.
Give me Tulane and East Carolina.
My goodness.
Yeah.
ECU. Okay. I thought I was going to go deep. Didn't go as deep as you with that. I'm going to go with North Texas. And I'm going to go all directional here in South Florida.
Interesting.
Doug, who you got?
UTSA versus Navy.
Navy!
Look at the schedule. The way the schedule works out, UAB at Tulsa, Rice, Temple, FAU. I mean, this team should be 5-0 in league play. And we've got South Florida, who they host. And then they get a bye, and they're at Memphis to end the season, and they always show up for Memphis. And I just think Navy, with the schedule, with these large 16 or 14 team conferences, a lot of this for me comes down to what your schedule looks like. And with Navy avoiding teams like UTSA and avoiding Tulane, they really get the scheduling lottery, in my opinion.
Wow. All right, none of us had any overlap there. 6 different teams in our 3 conference title games. Duck, just real quick, you mentioned that you got the Mean Green at a much better price here at Fort. You got them at 20, you said, or 22?
22 to 1 last week. Yeah, I think there's some value in North Texas, and I didn't pick them to go to the conference championship game, but I definitely won't be surprised at all if they find their way in contention. I think when you look at North Texas, the emerging defense is going to be so critical for a team that just has not had it for quite some time. I think the season will really come down to how they perform against Army and Navy, and also if they can defeat UTSA or South Florida at home.
Yeah, I might just join you with a little bet on that, just a small play. Not that I think that they can win it, but if I basically say there's value here in them getting to the game and I can hedge back against it, you've grabbed some value. Maybe that's kind of the angle I'll take. And Robert, you see any value here in terms of the conference champ?
Tulane is there. I think if FAU were to figure it out, like 100 to 1, that's a really big number, right? That is, you've got a quarterback that almost won the MAC last year in Cody Veldkamp. You've got a guy who's been able to do some amazing things in with some offenses. Yeah, the defense is a giant red flag, but 100 to 1 to a team that's always going to be really fun to watch, that's maybe not the worst bet.
This might be a good time to point out your affiliation with FAU.
Yes, also, I will note that as well. That being said, FAU does not make money if you bet on FAU, but I'm just saying, though, that we saw what Western Kentucky did. If you're able to even remotely get close to that, 100 to 1 to win the conference, that's not horrible. There's just worse things you could bet on, like UAB.
Oh. Yeah, true. There's a path there's a path for FAU that doesn't exist for UAB. All right. Thank you all for listening. I apologize for the dogs misbehaving. This guy says he's sorry as well. We will be back soon, I think, with either the SEC or the Big 12. We'll see which one of those we get to get wrapped up first. But thank you for listening, and we will see you again soon. Until then, bye-bye.